Hello, my name is Ruben and I am in grade 6. This is my project on microplastics. Are we plasticized? Problem. Plastic production has increased significantly over the past few years and has impacted the environment in a negative way. Once disposed of, plastic waste is exposed to a degradation process that gets disintegrated to micro or nano-sized particles. With so many tiny plastics around us, the two questions that I am trying to answer are: do microplastics exist in the air we breathe, thus making its way into our lungs? And is there plastics in the fruits and vegetables that we consume? Research plan and method. To answer my first question of the existence of microplastics in the air we breathe, I first examined how microplastics are formed and identified their sources. My second step was to find the different ways airborne microplastics are measured and analyzed. My third step was to collect data on the presence of airborne microplastics from different parts of the world. My fourth step was to research on whether microplastics were detected in the human lungs. To answer my second question of the presence of microplastics in the fruits and vegetables we consume, I first examined the presence of microplastics in the soil. Then I researched on whether microplastics make their way from the soil to the plants. My final step was to collect data on the presence of microplastics in the fruits and vegetables that we consume. I needed to identify the sources in which microplastics make their way into the air. Synthetic materials washed off from clothes, abrasion to vehicle tires on the road, run-off from plastic components used to develop and mark roads, plastic components used in our personal care products. When macroplastics are created, they are smoothened and grinded. In this process, microplastics are created as a waste product. Marine debris gets broken down into microplastics by wave action or photodegradation. This is the life cycle of microplastics. Microplastics break down and are then caught by wind currents and make their way into the air. They then fall down with precipitation. Plastics in a body of water are called marine debris and can make their way and break down. They make their way into the air through what is called burst bubble ejection pathways. Now we know that microplastics make their way into the air we breathe. Now to answer the question on how microplastics make their way into the soil. These are three common ways by which microplastics make their way into agricultural land. Microplastics enter agricultural land through sewage sludge. The solids in the sewage sludge are filtered out of the wastewater. The solids which contain microplastics are used as fertilizer for the plants. 50% of sewage sludge is processed for agricultural applications in both Europe and the United States. Another major way plastics make their way into soil is plastic mulch. What is plastic mulch? Plastic mulch is a product used to suppress weeds and conserve water in crops. Plastic mulches are a major source of plastic fragments in agroecosystems. Humans have known for a long time that plastics are littered in our lakes and other bodies of water. In addition to that, factories release their wastewater into the water. Farmers then use them to irrigate their crops. In the previous slides, I have identified how microplastics can make their way into the air. Now we are collecting data to prove that they are actually present in the air. To date, three main methods have been used to quantify the abundance of airborne microplastics: using an air vacuum filter, using a rain sampler, and using a Caltech active strand cloud water collector, or CASCC. All these methods pass air or precipitation through a filter, and microplastics are collected on that filter. In this table is a compilation of data from various studies done in different parts of the world, measuring the concentration of microplastics in the air. This is the location of where each study happened, and this is the average concentration. These are the polymer types, and these are the size and shape. Now to find out if these microplastics are found in the lungs. Studies have determined the presence of airborne of microplastics in human lung tissues obtained at autopsies. Polymeric particles and fibers were found in 13 out of 20 tissue samples. The polymeric particles were less than 5.5 micrometers, and the fibers range from 8.12 to 16.8 micrometers. The most frequently determined polymers were polyethylene and polypropylene. Moving on from the microplastics in the air to find out if they are in the crops. Here's a study that I analyzed. In a laboratory, a study has been conducted where the researchers grew plants in hydroponic and soil systems with microplastics that had been laced with fluorescent dyes. The researchers analyzed cross sections of the plants under a microscope outfitted to detect the fluorescence. The root stems and leaves lit up, showing the presence of microplastics. 2-week-old wheat plants were exposed to 50 milligrams per liter suspension of plastics for 10 days. These images show the results. What we are seeing here is the roots. Plastics, and these are the plastics inside the roots. Plastics in the xylem of the stem. In the leaf of the wheat plant, the vein to be exact, plastics were observed to mix with other cellular materials. 1-month-old lettuce was exposed to 50 milligrams per liter suspension of plastics for 10 days. These 3 images show the results. Plastics were detected as aggregated clumps in the roots. Plastics were observed to mix with other cellular materials inside the leaf vein. Moving on from the lab experiment to the actual fruits and vegetables that we eat. A new study has been conducted where scientists collect 6 samples of 2 fruits, apple, pear, and 3 vegetables, broccoli, lettuce, and carrot, from 6 states of Catania, Italy. These are the species of plants, and they all happen to have microplastics in them. To sum up the study, apples were the most contaminated among the samples. This study also revealed that the vascular tissue of plants have pores which are large enough to transport nanoplastics along with nutrients and water to the edible parts of the plant. The researchers speculated that the perennial nature of a fruit tree allowed microplastics to accumulate more than in annual crops. Fruit trees contain more microplastics because of its large, complicated vascular system. Fruit trees also have a vast and complex root system. The question that I was trying to answer was, since microplastics were all around us, does it get into our body? After finishing my research, I can conclude that when humans breathe, they inhale not only the air, but all the additional particles suspended in the air. Thus, MPs get into the lungs. For decades, scientists believed that plastics particles were simply too large to pass through the physical barrier of intact plant tissues. But the data I have collected from various new studies have shown that micro or nanoplastics can get into the edible parts of the plants. From plastics in the air we breathe to the food we eat, it is said that we need a credit card every week. My next steps going forward would be to research the effects on these microplastics in our body. Would they have a negative effect, or would they just not do anything? These are the links I used for my research. I would like to thank the Glamorgan School Science Fair and my family for guidance, advice, and encouragement throughout this project. Thank you for listening.